Hey guys, this is STS. I'm Tom, this is Alyssa. We're the Parkour Show.
The Parkour Show.
The Parkour
This
Show.
is the Parkour Show.
The most controversial parkour show on the internet.
I think that's fair.
Can we call that?
I think that's right.
All right, that's the new tagline. So, this weekend we just had our Origin Spring Classic, which this is the first of 3 qualifying events that are happening leading up to North American Parkour Championships, which is happening in September. As a competitor, I want to know your thoughts about the event.
Yeah, I think it was, well, I mean, I had a lot of fun. Let's just start with that. So I had a ton of fun. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I was competing with a bit of a bum ankle. It's like a previous injury that has been kind of sore the past month or so. And I decided that I really wanted to compete despite it, just for the experience and to help sort of get my confidence up and get into the place of competing.
So you didn't even really need it as a qualifier because you're already pre-qualified based on your performance last time at NAPC, but you wanted to compete for the experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And get used to getting in that mindset again.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like every time I compete, I learn things about competing, and I think that's, I mean, other than perhaps taking, you know, whatever speed comp class your local gym or school offers, like even with that, like it's the best way to get experience from competing, or you know, applicable to competing, is actually competing. So I did sort of check with you guys first. Like I was feeling like, oh, okay, well, I don't, you know, if I end up winning whatever events that I do, I was concerned like, oh, I don't want to like take that qualifying spot away from someone who isn't already qualified. But you guys assured me that like it was still an option for people who placed second if I was placed first. So
we'll talk about that in a bit, but
okay.
I just want to go through some of the people who podiums based on the events, and then we can talk about their runs and what we liked about it. So, so I guess starting with skill. Yeah. Joey Adrian.
Yeah, Joey Adrian. Gosh dang, like.
Yeah, I think no one was expecting that, particularly in the skills actually. Yeah. And also in the speed. We'll get to that in a second, but.
Honestly, like I wasn't going into it, like I was watching Joey do a little bit of practice stuff the night before the competition, and I was just. And he was just doing like he was doing some tricks and stuff, but he was also doing some just basic parkour. Like I remember watching him do this precision that like, I saw him go like standing at it and I was like, is he going for the cat? Oh no, he just cleanly landed that precision. And like, you know, it makes complete sense if you watch him do, you know, his typical style runs. Like he has so much power and endurance and everything. Like it makes sense that like he would have like very big output on his skills.
He's extremely well-rounded.
Yeah.
I think that's what we've learned from this last comp is he's extremely well-rounded, and he's actually improved at the things that he doesn't tend to display typically in videos, right? Yeah. So second place was Sid Mohorovic, who I think if he just landed those skills just a little bit cleaner, he would have taken first like no problem, because he did the hardest difficulty challenges. Yeah. And he actually reserved all 3 of his attempts on the hardest difficulty challenges for those events. And unfortunately, he just didn't quite land it the way he needed to, in order to, because he overshot the Kong stride a little bit, and then his lache was a little sloppy going into it. And he made the distance, but it wasn't clean at all.
Yeah. Refresh my memory, because I mean I was competing on Saturday, so I wasn't completely conscious of everything else that was going on at the comp. Right. So Sid went for the like level 5, which was like the most difficult skill challenges. He went for them on both the Dino Lache challenge and the Kong stride.
Yeah, he didn't try any other attempts.
Oh wow.
He reserved all 3 of his attempts for each of those 2. And it was really unique for me, like, because I'm as a judge, and I'm seeing, you know, I've seen everybody else take at least one attempt on a lower level challenge, and then it's like seeing Sid go for the top level challenges and just like put in going all in. Like
Yeah.
he's like not even trying to register any points on the board, just go all in and do it. And I thought that was actually a really good strategy for him because he clearly needed those attempts,
Yeah.
right, on those
Yeah.
challenges. But it just didn't work out the way he anticipated. But it's cool because he still qualifies for NAPC because we accepted the top 3 for the skills at this event. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy for him, at least for his skills run.
Did he compete in the skills last year?
At NAPC,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, he did.
That's what I thought. Cool.
Yeah, he was, he did pretty well with the Kong Stride event last year. His lache wasn't quite there yet, but he's been working on it a lot over the last year, so he's improved so much.
Cool.
3rd place, Rodrigo Pampa.
Yeah. I'm so happy.
What are your thoughts
so
on
happy.
Rodrigo?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we had a lot of out-of-towners at the event who did not really know about Rodrigo, and it almost got like a bit like a broken record. Like everyone's reaction to Rodrigo was, did he run? Like I didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Like that is everyone's, and he's a relatively unknown athlete, but
Extremely
Yeah.
unknown.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
nobody knows who this guy is,
Yeah.
and he shows up, and people are like totally in awe of his freakish ability to land.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He is like everyone's like, I don't understand. Like I didn't hear his landing at all. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. It's really freakish. If you ever get a chance to meet him or train with him in person, it's totally unreal. And when people talk about having like perfect tech and stuff, it's like if your landing isn't like Rodrigo, you're nowhere near perfect tech.
Yeah. Yeah. He's definitely like my inspiration when I think of landings.
Yeah.
Okay, land like Rodrigo.
Yeah.
I heard this wasn't told to me directly, but apparently his quote of like how he's like someone asked like, oh Rodrigo, like how did you develop your landings? He said like, oh I just at one point started trying to train like a squirrel. And so it's like, anyways, I just bring that up because it's a funny anecdote, you know, like he's a pretty humble athlete, and to like
Extremely
say like
humble,
that's like, you know, his movement inspiration is training like a squirrel. Anyways, that just gives you a bit of color of what his personality is.
I was really happy for him because actually this was his first competition.
Yeah,
This
that's
was,
right.
This was his very first competition, and I had told him to compete in the past, like a few times, like, oh, you should try, you know, NAPC qualifiers. And he's like, oh, I don't think I'm good enough for that. You know, like he really has this idea in his head that he's like, no, I have many more years of practice to get to that level. But I think he surprised himself this weekend with actually performing way better than he might have anticipated. And there's still tons of growth that he can go through as an athlete. But I'm really looking forward to seeing where he goes, especially how he does in NAPC now, knowing what competing is like and the types of challenges that he'll have to face in the event. Yeah, so that was a really exciting event. Skills was really unique. Moving on to speed. So we don't actually have a women's division for the skills. How do you feel about that, actually?
Well, hold on. Like, just to be clear, like we did have a women's division for the skills, but we didn't have a women's qualifier.
Right.
And I think, I don't know. I personally, like, I think I told this to you last year, like, if there were women's skill divisions, and that was like, you know, if it was like as big a deal as what the men were doing, and so there were women's skill divisions, that's actually more in line with what my training has been like in the past, and that's more my style. Like, I like finding those big power challenges and trying to execute them really well. Like, that has been like the majority of my training since day one. But that said, like, there's more opportunities for me in speed right now. And I don't like, it's not that I don't enjoy that, I also enjoy that. But if I was to choose one to specialize in, it would be skill, but it's just not there. So I'm certainly like, yeah, you know, I would love to throw down a skill line at NAPC. At the same time, I know you guys are wary of doing that because you don't want to have to change up the skill course for people. Yeah. And I'm not about to say like, oh yeah, like I can throw down like a lache line like Daryl Stingley or Dylan Baker. Like I'm not saying that for sure. Like, so
a big part of our philosophy with design of courses and design of these challenges is, so like let's take a look at like speed, for instance. we want to design courses that provide a large array of potential movement choices or strategy, right? The tactical element of parkour. That's something that is really underdeveloped in the sport. Is how well you figure out your own line. So we actually were criticized really heavily on our first year at NAPC when we did have a course that was basically a ground is lava course, which we've totally eradicated from our design.
Yeah.
It was a ground is lava course where there was a big jump that unfortunately no women competitors were able to complete.
Yeah.
And so what we ended up doing was we had a modified course where you could touch a certain, I can't remember exactly what it was, but you could use another course element to accomplish the course, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And so some of the women were really upset because it was like, well, we should just be competing on the same course, or it should be an easier course, or
yeah. There were people on both sides, and you can't please everyone. I know that if I was running on a modified course, but I felt like I could do like the course that the men had done, like I would maybe even to my demise as far as rankings, like I would choose to run the course that the men ran if I thought that I was capable of doing it. And like if you remember, I think it was at PKBC 6 or whatever, that 2012 competition where you guys had, it was again, like this was back in the days when they were still doing Don't Touch the Lava. There was like a big like 13-foot running pre, and I was like, you know what, I think that's in my range. Like I want to go for it. I, like just for my own interests, like I want to complete this course without going in the lava, whereas you did give the women's division the option to touch the ground once unintentionally with a 10-second like time addition. But I was like, no, like I'm gonna do my very best. And as it happened, like I got into the crane and kind of like bounced off both attempts at the run. But like I would be faced with the same thing again if you were to do like optional courses. Like even if it wasn't like what you guys did in 2013 where there was like route A and route B, I would still be like, well, I might not be able to do route A as cleanly, or like I'm, it might be riskier, but I'm gonna do route A if I was up to it,
I was actually just talking to Renee about this the other day, but like when I was at Apex 2 years ago for their competition, there was one of their courses was like really highly restrictive. It was like you have to go over this bar, under this bar. It's very specific rules about how the course needed to be completed. And Renee Dambley, she was like, she saw the line that she could do relatively quickly, which involved going under both bars, which is like consecutive lache, so lache to lache cat, and then climb up. And then, so even though it was like against the rules and she was going to get docked points, or she was going to get basically disqualified essentially, she still did it anyway.
Yeah.
And it was like, well,
Props,
because
Renee.
no, I was stoked on that. Like the cool thing about Renee was like that whole competition, she was competing amongst men, and she just like the skill challenges were totally out of her range, but she was doing equivalent challenges that she wasn't receiving any points for, just because she was like, no, I want to challenge myself in this way, and that was so much respect for her for that. But the issue is highly restrictive course design actually limits women participation in, or even performance in courses. And so with our speed courses, at least, we try to be as open as possible with our course design. But the problem is with skills, that's routinely the hardest design, event design that we face every single year. Renee and I have talk about this, all the time, and we're always shooting down each other's ideas because it's like it's just not working. It's just like, okay, that doesn't work. And then when we finally find a format that works, it ends up being like last year's NAPC, where it's just like, okay, here's the Kong Stride Challenge, here's the Lache Dino Lache Challenge, and basically only one person is going to be able to complete it. And that's basically what happened, right? Dylan almost stuck the stride line as we saw it, and Daryl almost stuck the lache pre at the end, but but no woman would be capable of doing that yet. You know, potentially in the future, particularly maybe the lache actually.
Yeah.
That actually has. I see lache as being so much more technical than being reliant on power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lynn Young,
Yeah.
come at it. Seriously, girl. Woman.
So when it comes to like inclusion and things like that, I think that's the hardest thing for us with skills. We want women to be able to participate in these events, but it's difficult. It's really difficult to make a challenge continuum basically where we can give them a score for you know their completion or partial completion or whatever, right? That's the hardest routinely designed. So this year we decided against having a women's division in the skill for NAPC. Maybe next year, right? We're trying.
Fingers crossed.
We're
Fingers
trying.
crossed. And I think, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like this year, or just with this competition, with the Spring Classic, like you guys did have a women's division. It just wasn't for qualifying spots in NAPC. How you guys did the skill division was you had a series of challenges set up around the room of different difficulty levels. Like, is that something that's realistic to do for NAPC?
We're considering some options to make things like graded on a level system, and we're actually going to try to see about eliminating some of the judging aspect of it. No comment there yet.
Okay.
We haven't fully figured it out yet, but we definitely learned a lot from this last event. So moving forward, there will be some potential options for the future. If not this year, definitely working towards next year. So.
Yeah. Well,
So,
that's good. That's good.
I wanted to move on to speed. So for the men's division, Joey Hadrian again took the top spot for speed, so he's qualified for NAPC.
Yeah.
And then just behind him, was actually Oliver Cazier from Seattle, who apparently hasn't really been training very much lately, but doesn't.
That's funny to hear.
He's been skateboarding.
Yeah.
But he's like 16,
Yeah.
and the kid's got an unreal jump, and he's super quick. And then third place was David Rangel.
Yeah.
From NorCal.
Yeah. Rodeo. Yeah.
That's the town.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. He's 18. So
Yeah, he's
we've got a
young.
lot of young competitors, and this was a prediction of Renee's for like a while ago. He's like, he said, I think this was from last year's NAPC. He said, I think next year's NAPC we're gonna see like all youth competitors at the highest level. We're gonna see like 18 and younger. And I was like, I don't think next year, but like I definitely see what he's saying. His argument is that basically like elite competitors are going to start to get younger.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be weird.
Well, people in general are starting younger.
Yes,
You know?
they're
starting parkour younger. They have, not always, but often they have the benefit of coaching now. So they're not, trial and error. They're not going through the process of trial and error in their training. Or maybe they are if their coach is experimenting on them. But
So for the men's division, for the speed, they had to deal with some really tough competition. There was a lot of really fast athletes, like Sid, who unfortunately he messed up on his first run. Amos came out, and who else was here competing in the men's division?
oh man, like Rodrigo was also in speed, and he was really fast.
Brian Prince, who surprised the
killed
hell
it.
out of me, like
Lucas DeMovio.
his stride length,
Yeah. There's, I don't know, the division was huge. There was a number of guys from Kelowna as well. We had our students in the men's division. Like, do you remember like what the actual size was? I think it was at least like 20, 21.
Total? No, I actually don't know how many men we had actually, but we did have a large men's division. For the women, so first place, you took it. Congrats. Although I know you didn't perform at the level that you wanted to because of your ankle, but it didn't stop you from taking it home first. So that's congrats on that still. And then, unfortunately, Christine Dietrich injured her shoulder.
Yeah.
So she wasn't able to finish the speed. She completed the first course, but
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate because I heard that on the second course, that's like the kinds of stuff that she was working on, was doing highline stuff.
Yeah.
And
like she in the first course, she actually hadn't. I think she was like third or fourth for times in the women's division on the first, but there was only like a couple seconds different there, and she was looking at the second going like, she was worried, but then when she saw the second course, she went, oh no, I got this, like I'm gonna make up the difference.
And then
now.
Practice run, she like separated her AC joint in her shoulder, so it's a really bummer. I never like seeing injury in competition, but it's something that's ultimately unavoidable in a lot of ways. I think that potentially could have been avoided if we. The issue is like using mats, not using mats. Basically, we had a red mat at the end of the course, and then she kind of got. She
landed, and then I guess she was trying to stay on her feet, and her feet got caught up in the mat, and I think. From what I understand, what she told me, she had that moment of, no, I'm trying to stay on my feet, which delayed her committing to a roll.
Right.
So she didn't get around to the back of her shoulder. She got to the
she
front.
She just went straight into the ground in the front. Yeah, that's really unfortunate because I was really looking forward to seeing her compete, not only in speed, but also in freestyle, because that's actually even more of her style.
Yeah, for sure.
In the sport, so.
Although she is very interested and committed to developing her speed course abilities too. But yeah, no, I mean that's where she's demonstrated a lot of proficiency in the past. So.
So second place was Juliette Marzio.
Yeah.
She is 14. Is that right?
15.
15. Okay.
She just had her birthday.
Okay.
Yeah, I was.
Cool.
I was
Happy birthday,
in
Juliette.
Seattle for her birthday. Yeah. She's Woo.
She competed in the Winter Open
and won
here, and she won that event.
Yep.
You weren't competing that time, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, she seems really level-headed. She seems like she knows what she's doing, and really smart with the way her movement choices are.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see her develop as an athlete in the future because she's so young. Like, I mean, it's just like Oliver, right? I mean, Oliver's 16, and it's like the kid's like not even training right now and coming in second place to like Joey Adrian, still beating all these adult males that
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's crazy, and like, I mean, in both of their cases, like they have so much potential still to draw upon, and spilled coffee happened. It's like a real STS episode.
It's a real STS episode. So Juliette, we qualified her for NAPC for her speed because of her performance. But I want to bring this back to the whole debate that's been sparked in the last two episodes of the equal prize money for women.
Yeah.
She came in basically second of 3 competitors. Is that right?
There was 6 of us all together. Christine had to forfeit, so it's out of 5.
Out of 5.
I feel like, and then also, unfortunately, Sophie, also from Seattle, had to forfeit.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so
she,
Sophie, and then and then we had like Laura,
Andrea,
and
Juliette, and myself.
Okay, yeah. So
so it was out of 4. There's less
yeah.
people. I know in the case of Laura, like I've talked to her about it. I'm super proud of her for doing the courses. Like she showed up. She kept her momentum going through.
Surprised the hell out of me. She not to say that like I'm not taking anything away from her, like from seeing her perform in classes, but she's been working really hard.
Yeah.
Like she's come in the speed class and really working on her skills. And when I saw her run the courses, I was like so impressed.
Yeah.
It really surprised me that like she responded like well under the pressure of competition. Unfortunately, Andrea took another few spills. I think just in her practice runs. And, she lets the pressure get to her. She's not as composed, and I think that's really what she needs to work on. Just work on breathing throughout the course, which is really hard to do when you're under that kind of stress.
Yeah, I felt that too.
Yeah.
Like for myself, I mean, like I've struggled with that, so I can definitely relate to where Andrea's at. But yeah, I'm not trying to like talk too much about individual athletes here, but just to say that like at least one of the 4 was doing the course as, her first competition, and she did phenomenally for the work that she'd put in and everything like that, which was, a lot, and it was really cool to see, and that was just sort of, from what I understand of Laura, that was, like, her goal, and, like, Andrea as well, like, Andrea's been doing parkour maybe a little bit over a year now, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And she's been doing really well at competitions, like, especially given, like, she's only been at it for a year, and, like, that's just sort of where she's at and where she needs to work on. I don't know how long Juliet has been doing parkour for, but she has, shown, like, a, dedication to the sport, like I was saying to you. She's done, like, an apprenticeship at Parkour Visions, like a coach, and she does, like, assistant coaching or volunteers her time there and all that stuff, so... Anyway, so she's been around for a while.
Yeah, that's great.
Anyways, I feel like you were getting to a point.
My point was smaller division, and so with the men's division, we were able to attract people who are at the highest level. Joey Adrian, for instance, right?
Yeah.
He's a name, right?
Yes.
Whereas in the women's division, I don't feel like we had that. We had Alyssa Serpa. You know what I mean?
Christine Dietrich too.
Unfortunately, but yeah, she we can't help that she was injured. But and this happened to us at NAPC last year, where we had a couple other like male athletes who ended up getting injured last second, like Bob Reese, Max Henry, and stuff like that. And it was really really good that we ended up having a lot of other male competitors there to just kind of, step up and still be able to perform when injuries happen. So like when Christine had to pull out from competition, there were other women there that were stepping up, but again, it's not as stacked a division, and that's kind of what I feel like what happened there at this weekend is just an example of how much more we need women in the sport. But in terms of like competition and prize money allocation and stuff like that, I still don't think it necessarily warrants the equal prize money of the top male competitors. But I want to actually talk about solutions and figuring out how we can actually create solutions, because this is what we didn't talk about in the last few episodes, and it's something that needs to be discussed.
I think as we get into this conversation too, it's important to point out, like, what are we looking to solve? Are we looking to solve women's involvement in parkour? Because that is a huge discussion, and it's bigger than just like women's involvement in sport parkour competitions. Right? That's different.
That is true,
and it's also different, and that is different than women's involvement in elite sport parkour competitions, right? So I'm guessing we're going to start there. Start with, how do we get women involved in elite parkour competitions?
We could start there, sure. I mean, but see, that's the top tier. That's the hardest part to work with, right? It's actually the bottom level is what we need to do.
Okay.
Is we need to increase involvement in parkour in general for women, because the larger the pool of athletes,
the more are gonna
the more that will rise to the top, right?
And see it. Like, I think, regardless of where you're at with parkour, why you're doing parkour, maybe you're just doing parkour, you're a weekend warrior, you like find like, male or female. Like, I think it's rad that you do parkour, even if, you're not trying to go pro with it. Like, that's awesome. Like, we need more people doing it, because I know something that you want to do is like make parkour a regular thing, like just like people might play soccer or hockey, like people are going to do parkour. Like, it's
my thing with parkour is I want it to be so boringly normal that like it's not like a surprise when you say I put my kid in parkour. Right? It's like a part of everyday activity, right? It's like, oh, my kids did parkour in school today. That's just like they did soccer last week, right? So that's what the goal is. And to increase involvement for young women, right?
So how do we do that? I want to say this because this did come up, I think in last week's episode, and it's the whole idea of like women's jam or women's jams and training. And one point I brought up to you last week that like seemed to be a little eye-opening or something. Like we're talking about the barriers to women in doing parkour. And I want to just say, like, I cannot speak for all women. Like, that's the hard thing. Oh, that's our timer. Okay. We'll try to wrap this up. That's the hard thing when we're talking about, like, demographics is, I can't claim to be here and be a representative. But what I do know and what I've experienced or seen from a lot of women, especially at the women's jams I've attended. I've been to the North American Women's Jam the last 2 years. I've seen that it's hugely positive for the participants. I've done, women's jams, women's sessions, all this stuff. And those kind of things, like the activity that, doing quadrupedal movement with a blindfold on, like, yep, it's not parkour, it's always practice, but if I remember correctly, like the Yamakasi used to do that kind of stuff. And, that's a, in some spheres, that's considered a legitimate training technique. So you can't just pick on women and women's jams on that. You can criticize that as a training technique, but don't single out like women's jams. But the second thing that I think, can be hard to understand as, a man in our society, not trying to get too much on like the sexism thing, but like, I gave you the example of like, okay, you're a kid, like brother and sister helping mom and dad like move. Okay, here, Johnny, like, here's this big box. You think you can carry it, little dude? Oh, right, I got it, Dad, takes the big box. Okay, here, Susie, take this light thing to go place in the house, right? Like, yeah, exactly, right? Like, of course, not all families are like that. Of course, that's a generalization. But that kind of attitude towards women's physicality is so systemic. And so when you get up, especially if you're starting like older, right? Like these norms around gender are formed, I think, around like ages like 5 to 7, right? So if you get someone who's like, already been through their teens, has probably dropped out of whatever sports that they did as a younger woman, like I think the statistic is like by the age of 13, like around high school age, like 50% of women or young women have dropped out of sports. Right. So if you get to that, like you have this whole idea and concept of what it means to be a woman, and that often doesn't include physicality. So when we get into these jam spaces, right, we want to create an environment where it's not just about, okay, I got to do this jump. It's I have to start dismantling all this societal bullshit that I've been taught my entire life. And so doing trust exercises with the group, like, yeah, it might seem like really indirect way to train parkour, but it is a way to start trusting those around you so that when they start saying, hey, I believe that you can do this jump, you believe them. Yeah. Right?
Because you trust them, because you developed a community with them.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just quickly talk about the societal issues that you brought up just now. I think that it's not just in larger society, it's permeated into parkour culture.
Absolutely.
And that's what I was trying to get at in the last episode, which is like setting the bar super, super low.
I agree.
And just keeping it low. And we're doing that to women in the sport. And I think that's a huge problem in parkour. And I think a lot of the people that are, I might be wrong about this, but a lot of the people that are arguing that like, oh, come on, like women should be equal prize money, equal this, equal that. I think a lot of those people are probably the ones doing that. They're probably the ones that are like, oh, good job. It's like, this is a bad example. This is a bad example, but there was, you were working on a few people were working on like doing like vault flips the other day before the comp. And you attempted a Kong front and you landed kind of on your butt. Yeah. And then people were like, oh, nice.
Which was like weird because I think I actually kind of flashed the first one I tried that session.
They applauded the one you failed.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? Yeah. Why did they applaud the one you failed? And would they have applauded the one I failed?
Yeah.
They didn't because I failed one.
Yeah. And like, I want to differentiate this too. If I had been standing at that and I hadn't attempted one yet and it was clear that I was like really in my head, I needed to overcome the fear and they applauded me because I just overcame the fear to do an attempt,
broke through and tried.
That's different, right? In this case, I had already landed a couple and I got applause for landing on my butt, right? That's the example. So I don't want people to watch this and be like, oh shit, like, as a woman, it's like every time I'm getting congratulated for doing something basic, like in question, it's like, no, if you are training with people who know you well and know where you're at, and like you just overcame some fear or concern, or, and you didn't land something perfectly, but people give you props, it's probably because they recognize that, what you had to overcome wasn't necessarily doing the jump perfectly the first time in that moment. It was just, they can recognize that you had to work through your process to get there.
Okay, so we touched on that idea of increasing participation for women at in the sport in general, in parkour.
Yes.
Now, like working towards the elite level, this is the argument that got us in a bunch of trouble.
Yeah.
But talking about the equal prize money, I think the best solution that has been proposed so far that I've seen is by Tyson. Tyson said, why don't you just make the prize money for first place equal to the top prize money for the men, and if the division is large enough, then you can reward second and third, but if it's not very big, then just don't reward second and third. Just keep it at the top tier, and if it just makes it more like the sort of art of motion argument, which is like, okay, top woman competitor, and you get an award for that, and then the other ones just maybe they came in second, and good job on coming in second, but you don't get the prize money for it, because like we said before, it's an economic argument. A lot of people are saying, like, why don't you experiment with your funds and you try this year and then this year? It's like, no. Funds are really extremely limited. Origins has put in so much money into making this event happen every year to the point where it's actually cash negative. Like, we lose money. We lose money every year. We're trying this year to not lose money. That's the goal this year, is to not lose money. It was the goal last year, didn't quite work. But it's the goal this year, is to not lose money. And with Apex trying to put in a lot of money for this event, we applauded them. We said, good job on putting your money where your mouth is. And then also, I think Renee said that, good job on putting money into the values that you want to support. Even though we disagree.
So you're not saying like Apex, change it up, stop doing what you're doing.
No.
But you're saying these are our reasons for not following in step with that quite yet.
Right.
And on the one hand, I'm like, I see what Apex is doing as really encouraging, and I respect the values that have led them to that decision, and I think. I don't think you guys are necessarily you're not in contradiction to those values as people. Like, I know both you and Renee.
It's not that we do.
And that's not it.
It's not that we don't value women in parkour. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We've done so much to try to support women's involvement in parkour. We have tons of classes. We had a Women's Wednesday program where we were inviting them in to come in for really, really super cheap just to train parkour. And we want to increase participation at the base level. That's the goal, because if you increase participation there, then you can grow the pool for more elite level competition. And it will improve their lives, right? It's, it's not always about just making more elite athletes, right? But it will improve their lives. But what I see happening is there's this idea that making a $2,000 first place prize is going to make more women start parkour.
Yeah.
Which I don't see that happening at all.
I don't think it's going to make more women start parkour. I think it might encourage more women already in parkour to consider pursuing it to an elite level. I think that's fair to say.
But it's only $2,000. Like, you can make more money doing something else, easily.
Yeah. But no.
Like Tam, for instance. Tam won't be at NAPC, and
she is going to the Apex.
She's going to the Apex,
but it's because NAPC overlaps with a performing job that she's going to be doing in Ontario.
So even if we did announce okay, the prize money is now $2,000, she probably still wouldn't show up, because it's still a risk for her as a competitor to spend money and travel and come to an event where if she's not going to win, or if she doesn't win, she loses money, right?
So I think what you're trying to get at is people compete in parkour right now because it's not, you know, it's not the most profitable pursuit. Like people competing in parkour, they do it because they want to compete.
They do it because they love the sport. They do it because they want to compete. They do it because they want to challenge. They do it because it's part of their philosophy of parkour. They're not doing it for the money yet. And I say yet because that could potentially happen. But the solution is not to reduce men's prize money. The solution is not necessarily to just equalize all prize money across the board. The solution is grow the sport, grow competition, make it a sustainable product that, you know, I mean, it's hard enough getting, you know, convincing Dylan to come out here and compete because he, you know, he's just like, oh, you know, I don't know how long I'll be doing these because I like finding my own challenge. But if that prize money increases by 3 times, I'm sure that's going to convince him to keep competing a little bit more, you know?
Yeah. So what is your vision for like the future of parkour? Like, do you see, you know, by the time prize money gets to like a more substantial, like let's say like 8 to 10 years down the road, do you see the women's divisions having similar or like on par pots, like prize pots?
I don't know. It depends on if there's enough women in the sport. I don't know. I would love to see that happen. I would love to pay women more for coming in first place, second place, third place, right? I'd love to see that happen. Right now, I don't see enough women competitors in general. It's just, and not only that, but women competitors who have been training with the goal of being a top level athlete, right? Like you've been training for like 8 years, is that right?
Just over 7 now.
Just over 7.
Yeah.
First half of that was casual.
Yeah, I was in university.
Yeah.
I didn't see parkour as like something that I could pursue in its whole. And I think like that's the other thing too, though. Like right now where parkour is generally like not everyone can pursue it as a career, and like I feel very fortunate to like work at a parkour gym and have my life focus be parkour. Not everyone can do that. So at the same time, like we have to value the fact that, you know, some of our top athletes, male or female, are not going to be whole all around parkour people. They might be doing other skills, but you know, if someone's doing like other physical disciplines that like might have some carryover into parkour, like we should still appreciate those athletes. I think that's pretty important, especially at this point in the growth, because there's just not enough money in parkour in general for everyone to be focused on it. And I still see, like, you know, like it was brought up the other day, like people who do circus or performance or whatever, like if they're using parkour to do that, like sweet. Or if they're not using parkour to do that, whatever, sweet. You're still into parkour, you're still maintaining what is currently like a high level in your sport, fine. And we have to be, you know, encouraging of those people coming into our competitions. So, yeah, that's where our talent pool is now. I think what you're saying is like down the road, like eventually, like divisions will be so competitive that only the people who are like incredibly focused in their training are going to be able to get to the top of those divisions.
So I want to wrap on this point, but
we could keep talking about this forever, really.
But Cordelia Storm, she brought up a point. She said something about how it's the 7-year-olds. It's the youth that we need to start. That's where we make the real progress, is getting more young girls involved in parkour at a younger age. Break those stereotypes away of like, no, you can't do that, you can't do that. Instead, let them do those things and encourage them to do those activities so that 10 years from now, when they're 17, they're top. They have the potential to be top athletes, or they're allowed to continue casual practice or whatever they choose to do. But we've broken down those societal standards of like, no, like little Susie, you can't do that because you're a girl, right? Like we need to break those away. It's all about the youth. If we can continue keeping those youth involved in parkour, the young girls, that's what's going to make the real change over time. So I want to wrap on that point really quick because we didn't talk about them. The style competitors, I just want to mention. For the men, top style that gets into NAPC, Joey Adrian. Top, who was second place? Matthew, what's his last name? Do you know?
Don't remember.
He's from Kelowna as well.
From Kelowna.
He's awesome.
Crazy good.
Super young kid. And then Lucas Othmer took third. And that was an incredible event. Big move. Joey Adrian threw swing cast full. Lucas did a triple onto hard ground, a triple full onto hard ground, and Matthew did
double
fly
side. Away. Or double side,
double
sorry.
side,
yeah, onto hard ground.
And stuck it. It was amazing. Really cool event. Combo was amazing. We've got to wrap it on that though. Yeah, so stay tuned for highlights from that event. Stay tuned for more episodes of STS. Let us know what you think about our discussion in the comments.
Yeah, please
share
do.
it with your friends. If you support what we're doing, please let us know. If you don't support what we're doing, let us know.
Yeah. Also, let me know if you'd like to see me in other episodes talking about general parkour stuff, because I can talk on that too.
Yeah.
I'm not just all about being
She's
a woman.
not just our woman commentator. She's also, you know,
A legit athlete.
Yeah, you're also a legit athlete, and you know what you're talking about. Cool.
Okay.
Anyway.
Cheers.
Cheers. Boom.
What's up? I was here the whole time. Do you know what we need to do? We, as a community, need to